So, Greg, thanks so much for joining me. I am very excited about this conversation because it's a conversation that needs to be had, and yet rarely does anyone ever talk about it. And so I want everybody to know who's perhaps listening to this audio or watching the video or reading the article that I've got a friend of mine named Greg on, who is a former VP of sales. And we're going to talk about a subject that is very rarely discussed, which is when sales leaders get fired. And what's that transition like? And so Greg has been really just super candid about having this discussion. So I know it takes a lot of courage. And I appreciate you, Greg, for jumping on with me so we can actually use this time to be able to shed some light on something that's really discussed, but more importantly, to help others who perhaps may find themselves in the same predicament. So thank you so much, Greg, for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm excited to talk today.
Excellent.
See if we can help somebody else.
Exactly. So let's jump right in. Let's not waste any time. So what would you say, if you can share with me, why did you get fired in your opinion?
Well, I think quite bluntly, it's a little like pro sports. At the end of the day, the score matters, and the score wasn't where it needed to be. So as I told my boss who gave me the news, I don't agree with your answer, but I do agree with your logic. If the table was turned, I'd probably make the same decision.
Wow. And that's pretty powerful because when you think about it, sales leaders, we've got the combination of everybody's quota, right? And so we've got the big number. And you're right, it is a business decision usually. And so it sounds like both your boss and yourself, you guys handled it graciously, but you also more importantly looked at it from a very logistic perspective, not emotionally driven, just, hey, here's the facts, right? So
yes, actually, emotionally, I think he would have preferred not to have to do it, but we've got to be honest about where we're at.
Yeah, exactly. And interesting. That's powerful. Say that again, Greg. Okay, because I think a lot of people, whether they are the sales rep or in this case we're talking about sales leaders, there is the feeling that certainly you went through. But yeah, we don't usually think about the person who has to deliver the bad news and what they actually go through as well. And if they're worth their salt, I'm sure they've pondered over this for weeks or months. So talk a little bit to me about that.
Yeah, I do think it was rough, and as you know, we've had to let people go in the past, and it's never an easy conversation to start. Thankfully, he was direct and simple in the message. He didn't try to couch it in some euphemistic term of, we've made a decision or we've got to discuss, or, he was blunt. He said that we had a board meeting and they had decided to go in a new direction and they're going to give me some time to find a new job. And I appreciated that. I was in shock. I sit there and stared at him, make sure I heard what he said. But once I got through that first few seconds, we were able to have a good conversation. And he was visibly distressed, but it was a decision needed to be made. So I appreciated that.
Exactly. Yeah. And I like what you said because, there are times that I mentor sales leaders, obviously as an executive coach. And one of the things that I always share with them, which is something that you just touched upon, is, when you have to let someone go, that's part of the job, right? It's the sucky part of the job, but part of the job nevertheless. But, you should hopefully never, as a leader, sales leader or any leader for that matter, this should never be something that you become callous about, or something that you can just do in your sleep, right? There are times, to your point, that we do have to let people go, but it should always make you absolutely sick to your stomach that you've got to do that. And not because of any emotion, but because they're people at the end of the day. So though they may have been your salesperson, they're also someone's mother, someone's wife, someone's sister, someone's daughter. And so I don't know about you, but whenever I've had to let people go, I've always been mindful of that, to let them keep their dignity intact. Just because they deserve and they've served you well, and maybe it just wasn't a good fit or what have you. But it's super important as leaders, or maybe even future leaders, perhaps hearing this audio, that, firing someone is never easy. And certainly we should never take it lightly. And throughout your whole career, it should make you uncomfortable. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It just means that it should absolutely make you uncomfortable, that you've done everything possible in a decision, it needed to be made, and, everybody needs to part ways, but it should never be something that's taken lightly. So it sounds great that sounds like your boss handled it with grace.
Yes, he did, very much, more than I think, 99 out of 100 couldn't have done it as well. But it's important that people understand you don't need to have all of the information to make that decision. He might not. I could ask him. I think it would be okay to speak for him. He might not be 100% certain that me individually is the reason the team is not where it should be, but the team is not where it should be. So he has to act. And I think being able to do it the right way gives him the freedom to act when he should and not prolong a decision and delay something that he wants to do. And it just gets worse. It's not fair to me, or, it's not fair to him. So being able to do it the right way gave him the power to make the decision, I think, in a timely manner and not prolong something that needed to happen. So I think that's important, that people understand you don't need to have all of the details filled in. If you need to make a change, you need to make a change, even though you can't explain it all.
Right. You see that a lot in professional sports, right? Where it's just the team isn't working out for whatever reason. They've got, obviously everybody that makes it professionally is all very good, but for whatever reason, it's not working. And so, usually the coach is one of the first things that has to change. And you're right. It doesn't mean that because the coach is no longer there, now they're going to start winning all of a sudden. But yeah, I think that's a really valid point. So Greg, how do you feel? I mean, being honest, right? Nobody likes being off the team, but let's talk a little bit about that. How are you feeling right now?
Yeah, so I've had about 5 days since the news, if I'm counting correctly. I found out last Thursday at 4:30. Initially, of course, I was shocked, and there's that, how am I going to tell people? What does this mean? What's happened? Those kind of thoughts were racing through my mind, and especially about a 30-minute period right after the news. I had to pick my kids up at 5 o'clock, so I had about a 15-minute commute where I had to get my game together. And honestly, it's helped that I have 6 kids, ages of 11 to 16, and having them look at me and see how I handle something like this, how I'm going to teach them is how I act, not what I say, but what I do. And that bar out there, knowing they're watching, is giving me a little extra strength, perhaps. I'm not sure if I'd have been on my own and would have allowed myself to self-pity or to get in a dark mood, but I don't have that privilege. So having them watch me, I think, is giving me the strength to take the higher road. I was able to shake it off and tell my wife, and we initial shock of the news to her, and then we got to work, and we knew that there was a plan, and it was we've initiated that plan, and we're doing good things. So
awesome.
We're still nervous, of course. I'm not going to pretend like not worried at all, but we were prepared for this. It's the world we live in, so we've got a little bit of savings, we've got a budget. We were able to initiate some extreme cuts right away that are temporary until we get back, and the income side is back where it should be. And that's given us the strength. And we've actually had some good conversations that otherwise we may have postponed, about the fear of the unknown and how to prepare for this even better next time. And, that you should always live knowing that the surprise could come.
Right.
So far, it's been really good on a mental game. But there's still the nervousness hanging over your head. But anytime you're in sales and the quote is serious, it's never easy. So that nervousness you have to live with, and you got to get your mental game tough. And it's a good chance to put into place what I preach, right? So now I get to practice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's really good. And so, let's dive into that even more, because I love what you did. You sprang into action. Love what you just said about, hey, I got my kids watching me. This is the best example, because a lot of times, we parents can be guilty, do what I say, not as I do kind of stuff, right? But,
exactly.
When the rubber meets the road, they're really watching to see what you do. And that's what they'll emulate. And so the fact that you're like, hey, I don't have time to get go into a dark place, if you will, was really great. And you're right. And 6 kids, first of all, Greg, like, hallelujah, right?
Yeah. We were told more's caught than taught, so how we walk is how they'll walk. So it's a good chance, and it doesn't mean that it's less scary. It just means that the game's more important. So that's given me the extra energy to get going. So it's been fun.
This will be life lessons that you really couldn't. This is going to be their true, opportunity to see life worked out, right? And to really be able to give them that. What's the word I'm looking for? That ammo, or that I don't know. Just when they go through a tough place, they can recall, hey, this is how I watched my dad go through it. So I think that's cool. Now, talk to me a little bit. Did you ever go through? There's 2 things. And when I work with clients, a lot of times this is something that we talk about as well, is what I call going through the grieving process, because sometimes people can be connected to their title. I know for me, at one point in my career, I was very much attached to my title. And one of the best things that could happen is no longer having that title, right? Because it's like, okay,
Right.
wait a minute, how did I get here? How did I get where, hung up on that, right? That's not who I am. But sometimes you can easily get there. And so, how did you go through it, or did you go through it, in the sense of, because you mentioned, now I have to tell my family, and what will people think, and, your neighbors and all that, they know you as VP of sales for, XYZ company. And now all of a sudden, none of that exists. So talk to us a little bit about that. Did you have any challenges with that?
Yeah, so some. I think that people have an expectation, and when you're doing really well, and I was doing well, and I think I will do again. But there are people that look and say, well, see, I knew it wasn't real, or I knew it wouldn't last, or those rumors that might be flying around. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
that's in my own head. They might not even be saying it, but you've got to defend yourself against that inner talk. So yes, I mean, you need to maintain a certain upward uh, trajectory, and if you don't, you think, I'm not where I should be. So I'm 50 and I'm not peaked yet, so I do want to keep going, and this is a chance. I told my wife I was pushed out of the nest by force, but now we'll see how high we can fly.
Yeah.
This is maybe a good thing. We're going to find out. So
Yeah, exactly. Well,
um,
you know what? I
yeah.
always think, my personal belief is that it's always a good thing, right? All things are going to work for your good. And so it may not seem that obvious right now. Usually when you're in the thick of it, it's very rarely do you get to really see, like, okay, where's this going, But
Right, right.
usually you can look back, whether it's months, weeks, years later, and then be really clear, like, okay, this had to happen in order for this to happen. So I think you've got the right attitude. So we talked a little bit about being attached to your title, and also, it's been my experience that you also have to go through the grieving process of things as you know it is no longer. Like every day now, what do you do when you wake up, right? It's like,
Right, right.
you
No,
don't
exactly.
have a gazillion emails and this, and it's just kind of your daily routine is very disciplined, or very different, I should say. Now you're home, and the kids are like, what are you doing here? Right? So how has that been?
Yeah, to your point, rhythm and routine became even more important. So
Mhm.
Thursday night when we had the news, before we went to bed, the next day was already planned, because I didn't want to fall into a vague agenda. I wanted
Mhm.
to have marching orders and get to work, right? So step one, I get up at 4:30 every day, and that's new for me. That's something
Mhm.
I'm working on, just to increase discipline. That's not a thing I always do, but I've
Mhm.
done it every day now since the news, and that gives me the extra hours in the morning before things get busy to do my actions that I need to do. Some of it's ordinary: the resume, the cover letters, the updating LinkedIn profiles, sending private messages. These things I spend many more hours on now than I used to,
Mhm.
and also daydream about how do I give value to folks, even in my current situation, right? So there's still advice you can give. My team's still there. I got to make sure they still succeed and don't get sidetracked with some silly news about me being gone. It's fourth
Mhm.
quarter. They've got to produce for their own families. So I've talked to them and said, I'm in a unique position now where I can help you with zero judgment. You can be honest. There's no risk. Let's keep going, because we've got an interim VP in my place already. He's got some marching orders from the CEO that he'll execute. So I'm off to the side and I can still help. My company is unique that they're still paying me for a while I search for a new job. So
Mhm.
I'm still committed to make sure I give value to them, even though they've told me my first priority is to take care of my family and myself, and not their job. So I'm very blessed to be in a company that's unique. At least I think it's unique. I don't know of
Mhm.
any others that act this way. And I'll search for another place that we can, bring that same kind of value. So I've talked too much now and lost the original question, but routine I think is important too, because I need the support, and I need to know what I'm doing. And this morning my wife said, well, what's your plan today? And it got me off guard. I didn't have a solid plan for today.
Mhm.
So that's an improvement we're going to make here on day 5, is before we go to bed, I'm going to have a plan for tomorrow, because I need one.
Good for
So
you.
these are some things that I'm learning more. I've always preached them, right? I mean, before you hang your
Mhm.
cleats up, know what you're going to do.
Yep.
It's a little different to put it in practice. So I need to approach it like any sales job. I have I'm selling myself more than ever. You always are selling yourself as you preach. I've heard you on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
But now that's the product I have, and so I need my own personal quota. Who am I contacting? Who am I chasing? How many meetings am I going to have? How many jobs am I going to apply for? These metrics now are self-imposed, and I need to put that into play.
I
So
love it. I love it.
fun.
Woo! Way to go, Greg. That
Yeah,
was some
ready
good
to roll.
preaching. That was powerful. That was
Yeah,
really good. And you're right. You're right. Now it is the ultimate sales job. You're no longer standing behind a brand or a company. It's you. You are the brand. And so, yeah, you're gonna give every lesson you've ever shared with other people that you've developed, or all the lessons that you've learned over your many years in sales, whether it was starting off in your career or moving up the ladder. And so now it all comes into play, because the biggest challenge right now is absolutely reinventing yourself, reselling yourself, repackaging yourself, and what is that next Greg 2.0 look like? And I think it's going to be very exciting for you, whatever that is. Obviously, I don't know what it looks like at this stage, but we've all been through it. I think when you think about big companies, or any company for that matter, change is just happening. There's so much change going on in the world today. And so if you're not agile and adaptable, you're going to die a slow, painful professional death, right? So, it's
absolutely.
just the
Yep.
season that we're in. So I love everything that you just said, because that's really what it takes in today's, business community. It really does take adaptability and really being okay with change. So that's really good. What would you recommend, Greg, to people who maybe find themselves, and you're right, your company is, extremely gracious. Not every company goes through that and treat their people so well on their way out. And so those companies that do, kudos to them. And of course, for those people that maybe find themselves in a similar position as you are, or maybe in a worst case scenario where they were just shown the door and didn't have a couple months to kind of figure it out, what
Right.
would you
Right.
recommend that they do?
I think we have to start a little before that news. I mean, if they already got that news, sure, we can help.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the message I'd like to give is for the people that are doing well. The sun's shining, the day is bright. They're knocking it down. That's the time to start to prepare, but not in a negative way. Just
Mm-hmm.
make sure that you've got some money that you're putting away, and then you understand your expenses, and you're not living above your means, because winds of change do blow, like you said, and you don't know how hard they're going to blow. So I think a lot of it where we're not quite as panicked as we could be is we have some of those things squared away. My wife, thankfully, is far better than me, and she takes care of those things. So she knew exactly what we need to cut and what we can shut off and what's not an emergency and what's vital. And she had all these things ready to roll. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're not, then that's a much greater fear, right? So we kind of knew what needed to happen. So you need to think about that now. I think you need to make sure you're journaling your current job, so when it comes time to update the resume, you're not staring at a blank piece of paper and saying, "Well, what did I do?"
Mm-hmm.
I like to write articles on LinkedIn. That's my form of journaling in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Some people do it other ways, but I think it's important that you write down what you're doing. It's really hard to look back over the last couple of years and think, well, what were the highlights and what did I remember? And you're going to miss things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then when that news does come, realize that a little self care is important. Just like on the airplane, you put your mask on yourself before the child. So I do think it's important to, whatever works for you, to take some walks, do some journaling. Real fast, you can't take long, but real fast, there's a chance to do some honest examination and reflection and saying, okay, this is spring training here. As I get in shape, who do I want? Who do I want to recruit me, and what kind of jobs do I want to get? And one of the discoveries I found was that I'm more of a builder. So I started this team more or less from scratch, and we doubled in size, and we created training and programs and processes and all this building we put in place. And after a couple of years, the company decided we needed more of an operator to come to a bigger scale, because they're not changing much. They're going to open up and grow more. So
Mm-hmm.
I can't disagree with that. So now I look for the new challenge. I think where can I hit a home run? And I can hit a home run where there needs to be some that needs to be built or recreated. That's my specialty. So that chance of reflection wouldn't have really came without this push, right? Without the need. What's
Mm-hmm.
the saying that necessity is the mother of invention? I think that's what they say. But and this necessity is real, and it's close in, so I can't push it off. I can't think it's tomorrow. It's now, and that is a it's a good place to be. I don't waste a
Mhm.
lot of energy and thought.
Good for
I even have
you.
my kids are even, I give them every morning, I ask them to go find positive quotes or uplifting things from school. So they come home with quotes they got from school or things they noticed around on the walls. It's a lot of fun at the dinner table. They're trying to give me my own emotional medicine, we call it. But,
I love that.
so
I love that. And you know what's really interesting? I love that for a whole lot of reasons. But, obviously for me, I specialize in neuroscience selling. And what I love about that is the fact that the brain, we always know we want to, what you can believe, you can achieve. And, we've heard all those sayings.
absolutely.
But what a
Yeah.
lot of people don't realize is that it really does, there is the positivity, but then there's the science behind it, right? So the brain, what's cool about it is it can do a lot of things. It's obviously the biggest, fastest supercomputer out there. It's amazing what the brain can do. But one thing it can't do is decipher what if you've been thinking a lot about versus what's reality. It can't decipher the two. And so when you're feeding yourself with positive, whether it's quotes, affirmations, thoughts, what have you, that stinking thinking can pull you down, but for it, faster than you know it, because the brain doesn't know whether it's true or not true. Right. And so if you're just
Exactly.
constantly
Yeah.
feeding yourself, positive information and acclamation and, really looking at the glass half full, it really does have a huge impact on how things work for you. People who tend to see negativity tend to have a negativity, right? People who tend to see positive things tend to work out for them. So it's
Right. You have to
there's
be
a
very careful how you frame the situation, right? And if you framed
yeah,
it wrong, you need to reframe it. So you can
yes,
usually, with a little creativity, find a way to.
hmm
Les Brown, he talks about it. You can always say it's possible.
right,
Um, that's an authentic statement that you can make. It's not false. You don't have to pretend. It is possible, and things
hmm
like that. I've gotten these little tools now that I'm relying on. So
hmm
like you can always procrastinate rest. Like I said, I get up at 4:30. There's times I get tired. You've got to give yourself permission to be
hmm
tired. Just say, hold on, I'm going to rest in an hour. Well, an
right.
hour comes around, I might not feel like I need the rest anymore. But by giving myself that permission to rest tomorrow or to rest in an hour, I can keep going with the energy that I need. There's
Exactly.
things like this that I'm using that are now more valuable than ever. So
I
you
love
should
it.
collect some of these. Yeah.
I love, love, love that. And I love that you're getting your kids involved. And then here's one thing I would say as well. When I asked you, what would you suggest for others? And, you gave really good specific action items for them. In which what I loved the most was, hey, if everything's working great for you right now is actually the time that you want to invest in those kind of things, looking at your finances, making sure that you're living, below your means, if you will, and making sure that, what is it that I am loving to do and really following your passion and making sure that you're staying true to yourself and your values. And the only other thing I would add to that is to also make sure that you're networking, right? Because, when you're working, especially as a sales leader, a lot of times you're just behind the scenes, making sure that your people are successful and that you're clearing the way so that they can get their job done. But there's also the times that you may not realize how much of connection you have with other people of influence who perhaps could maybe just be, great friends for right now, but down the line could become very instrumental in that next phase of your career or the next phase of your life. And so really being about serving others, whether it's through free content, free information, just, hey, I saw this, I thought of you, giving and not trying to get anything in return. Because when that time comes, as you've built that network, as you've served those folks in your sphere of influence, when the time comes, you may actually need to tap into some of those favors. But at the end of the day, the law of reciprocity will kick in and people then want to help you. Hey, what can I do? How can I help? Let me put my ears out on the ground and see if there's anything or anybody that I know in my network that can utilize your talents, your type of expertise. So definitely networking when you don't need the network is actually one of the best things that you can do as well. And,
No, I
also,
couldn't agree more.
mm-hmm,
Yep, Jeff Calloway's a running coach, and he always says, "Walk before you need to," and I think you need to
mm,
help before you need to, right? I mean,
yep.
it's easier to build trust if you've come to somebody first and said, "Hey, like you said, this article's interesting," or "Do you know this author? Have you seen this podcast?" And
Mm-hmm.
they realize that you're a person of value before you need help. And then, I've been humbled by the amount of friends that have reached out to recommend a connection or something I should read or look at even now. So I really have seen the power of the friends and the network and the people that can help. It's refreshing. It
Awesome.
puts a burden on me to think, could I do as much when the tables are turned? So that's a good burden to have.
That's right, exactly. Well, I know
Yeah,
that you're going to be just fine. You obviously are very talented. You know, you went there and you served your purpose. Your gifting was building, you built it, and now it was time for you to turn it over to someone else and go find another place that you can build. So, with that, how would people reach you if they were interested in talking to you? Do you have maybe an email address you want to give, or any of that information?
yes, LinkedIn's probably the easiest nowadays. I think a lot of
Mhm.
people use it, but you can find me on LinkedIn quite easily.
Mhm.
It's just by Greg Dyke. So the first name is Greg, and the last is D as in David and Yche. That's been the easiest way to communicate.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you
Yep. And
so
if I
much.
can help you, let me know. This has been a fun, and I've always enjoyed your content. You're one of the better ones. So good luck.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Well, I appreciate you taking the time, and I really appreciate the fact that we had a good, candid conversation. And I believe that it's going to be a huge blessing for other people in a similar situation out there as well. So, you and I will be in touch. And thank you so much for
Absolutely.
your time. And I know that you've got to run. So, have a great rest of the day, Greg.
You too. Thank you very much. Talk to you soon.
Okay, you too. Bye bye now.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Greg. That took a lot of guts. And I wanted to make sure that this was a conversation that we had, because when you're in sales, we know that at the end of the day, we've got to perform based on the dollars and cents. And so we are always at risk, high reward. And so I loved the fact that Greg was so courageous and candid about being fired as a VP of sales. And so we hope that this information is going to be helpful. Clearly, in the arena of sales, transition happens all the time, whether you're a salesperson or a sales leader. We all know the saying, you're as good as your last deal. So, unfortunately, transition is very likely to happen somewhere along the line to either you or someone you know. And so, we want to make sure that we're there to support you. One of the great takeaways that I took from Greg is really getting prepared when you actually don't have anything to be concerned about. Really reevaluating, is this what you do? Is this what you're passionate about? Is this really the best use of your talents and your gifts? And have you continued to grow with the company, or maybe you've outgrown the company, or maybe the company's outgrown you? Having that real, honest conversation with yourself is never a bad thing. So again, I appreciate what Greg did. It took a lot of courage to just put it on out there on his true, authentic feelings. But of course, if there's anything that we can do to help you here at stephaniechung.com, let me know. And of course, what I would encourage you to do is, if you have any questions or comments, hit us up on LinkedIn. We're happy to get engaged in the conversation. And of course, if you want to know more about neuroscience selling, or how we could help you take your team to the next level, feel free to hit us up at stephaniechung.com.